Well, thank you for coming. I'm so excited to be here. Not so sure if I have enough voice though, because I just lectured an hour and a half. Yeah, I know, and I came right here to be with you guys because I know that you really want to learn about this topic. Or you just want to be the CEU. All right. Okay, so my topic is acculturation and anthropometric changes in Filipino Americans with hypertension. This is like a sequel to my dissertation, and I had this grant when I first started here at UNLV in 2014. This is my first intramural grant with $5,000. What am I supposed to do with that money? So there's a lot of potential for that. So the objectives is to have an understanding of what the acculturation process of Filipino immigrants in the United States, and also to really identify the relationship between these levels of acculturation and the anthropometric measurements that we're dealing with the Filipino samples here in the valley. Um, Acknowledgements for my sponsor. I need to put this, on my presentation. So this is funded by our very own SON. My co-investigator is Dr. Angosta, and we also thank Dr. Calderon who provide us the site to collect the participants. And also my two dedicated research assistants, Amanda Aldana, who's now an RN, and Aldwin Agosta, who's like a pre-med student here at UNLV. So what is acculturation? So I'm just going to give you a short definition of what is acculturation. Because, we have a different perception on what acculturation may be. But this is from Ben Sira's definition that it's a multidimensional, it's a very complex process that overall talks about the adaptation of groups or individuals to a new society. We have been acculturating in our very own, our own level, at our own level, when we have a new job, when we are live in a different neighborhood for the first time. How are we going to make this work? And for all immigrants who come to United States, they have this kind of process. Acculturation and immigration, they go hand by hand. So, and this is very important to my research. And why is it important? Well, they talk about economic adjustment. The higher the level of acculturation of immigrants, the better they are in, let's say, finding the jobs that they want, the one that they can function superiorly, within their profession or whatever is close to their skills. Linguistic adjustment, the higher level of, if they have a higher level of acculturation, then they can easily want to know or understand the language of the host country. And that brings to societal adjustment as well. So whatever is going on within the society, whether are they going to be a Democrat or Republican, that is something that they will learn, during the acculturation process. So that's why it's very important. Psychological adjustment, it's all about the positive well-being. We know that once an immigrant is well adjusted to the society, to the new country, it will create some psychological benefits that they really feel that they are welcome, that they really feel that they can function, that they can really feel that they can raise their family, that they really feel that they can fulfill any more ambitions that they may have. There's also health benefits and risk factors associated with acculturation. And, talking about healthcare accessibility. The higher level of acculturation they have, then they know whose doctor to see, what kind of healthcare system are we operating here. There are some literatures that also studied about how alcoholism and tobacco use can also be a consequence of a person who is highly acculturated. And of course, and this is my main topic, my main trajectory, dietary changes and physical activity that goes with acculturation. So there are some models of acculturation, and I'm not gonna really go into details, but there is the unidimensional models, and that model has been criticized heavily because it's very linear. It's either the immigrant retain or give up their cultural origin, or the bidimensional models, which they can choose to what degree they maintain their identity. So they can be highly acculturated, let's say in the workplace, but when they go home and have their personal life, they are still, dealing with members of their own culture, like their circle of friends, the food that they eat, and whatever social media or whatever media that they are using. And there are some measures, and these are only few that are very popular, within my sample. The short acculturation scale for Hispanic was developed by Dr. Marin in 1987. And the good thing about that is when she developed that, a short acculturation scale for Filipino was adopted by Dr. De La Cruz in 2000. So, this is actually an adaptation from this. And of course, for those of you who are doing a psychological acculturation studies, the Swinley Asian self-identity acculturation is also very, very popular and very common. So I'm using the ASASPA for this study because it really reflects on what I really want to find out. So ASASPA has 12 items that measures 3 dimensions. Number 1, specific language. What language do they use? Number 2, preference for the media language. So that one kind of like was very strange for me at first because I said media language. I mean, everybody should just like use English, right? But no, with the power of internet technology and broadband and Wi-Fi, we have Filipinos in the Valley who are still watching TV shows from the Philippines and watching Filipino shows, watching Tagalog movies, and also with the radio. So I said, well, that instrument is still valid. Ethnic preference in social relationships. What friends do they associated with? Is it more of Americans? Is it more of Filipinos? Or is it balanced? So those are the things that I would like to find out from this sample. So if you haven't known yet, Filipino Americans is like the second largest Asian ethnic group next to the Chinese Americans in the U.S. And there are about, this is, unofficial, 3.4 million Filipinos in the United States. The census will only release up to 2.2, and those are documented. So we're talking of the undocumented and those transitioning to be documented to be about around 3.4 million. And in the valley alone and the surrounding areas, we have about 100,000 Filipinos. So it's really a huge population. And a little bit of history about the waves of immigration, how these Filipinos came to the United States. So we'll start on 1899 to early 1900, when student visas, believe it or not, were issued for selected Filipinos in the Philippines to come to the United States. And also labor shortage that they need for the Dole plantation of pineapple in Hawaii, and some kind of agrarian things in California. Some Filipinos came to the United States because of those reasons. After World War II, our servicemen married Filipinos from the Philippines, and they brought their bride back to the United States. Some servicemen who were, the Filipino servicemen who were granted U.S. citizenship also brought their family, after World War II. And this is very interesting to me because I was looking at the history itself, and I said, darn, Dr. Tan was not here to confirm this, but there are physicians, nurses, and other professionals that they actually took from the Philippines and they were trained in the United States, and the goal is for these people to go back to the Philippines and retrain all these future professionals, That's why I said the educational system in the Philippines is very similar to the Americans, and that explains that. In 1965, after they train and they have the school and all have their certification, the highly educated professionals arrived in the United States, and mainly on the west coast first of the country, and then they started migrating to different parts of the United States. And we're talking about doctors, we're talking about nurses, teachers, and other professionals that came to the United States. And the rest is history, as what they said, because after this, we have first few Filipino immigrants, first generation that came to the United States, and they start bringing their families. So waves of immigration from the Philippines due to economic opportunities and family reunifications. We have this from time to time. Remember when there was a nursing shortage and they had to recruit, Filipino nurses from the Philippines to work here in the United States. I saw that, because I was a brand new nurse at the time, and when the Filipino nurse when they came to the United States, the hospital would sponsor the whole family with green card and visas, and even offer the husband a work in the hospital. That's how desperate they were.
Is that in Canada?
In the United States, in the United and Canada too. You're right. Because we're very close to Canada. This pattern also existed. So a little bit of background. Filipinos have a higher prevalence of cardiovascular disease among Asian groups, and you can ask Dr. Angosta about that, because and the numbers are just getting stronger and stronger. Also, Filipinos have a high prevalence of hypertension. Studies have revealed that body mass index, so here we go, the BMI, the waist circumference, and weight, no, it should be waist. Dr. Mansell is here to correct my spelling. Waist-hip ratio are likely to increase when degree of acculturation increase among immigrant population, and that's being studied by several scientists. And they claim that migratory process for most immigrants may impair or even enhance their ability to self-manage whatever chronic disease that they have. So it adds up. So we really have to deal with the level of acculturation of that person in really to understand, what is going on. How can we make this intervention work? How can this fit, congruently to their culture? So the research purpose, and this is only like a part one of my study, because the other part, maybe I will come back and present it because it's too broad, is to describe what level of acculturation of Filipino Americans diagnosed with hypertension, and to describe the relationship between the level of acculturation and the anthropometric measurements in Filipino Americans diagnosed with hypertension. So what we did is we recruited 108 Filipinos in this primary clinic in Southern Nevada. And we include over those who are 21 years old, who could read, speak, and understand English, or currently diagnosed with hypertension. And the respondents, the ones we recruited, we want them to be at least 1 year in the United States in order to really understand that, yeah, maybe this is acculturation, maybe this is the process. So the instruments that we use, you can read it. Again, I use a short acculturation scale for Filipino Americans and the social demographics. Also, the second part of the study, we are also studying the physical function, the fruits and vegetable consumption, and also their quality of life. And this is like, I thought we're going to have a hard time with this because we need the actual biometrics. We really need for them to lift their clothes, and we need to measure. And the good thing about this primary care clinic is they give us a room where we can do this type of study. And of course, the $10 incentive is not gonna hurt, because 25 minutes and you're done, and you have $10 after that, and they like that. So, look at my results, or our results. These Filipinos, as you can see, most of them are on the 61 to 70 years age category. That's like, older. We're talking of the older immigrants here. We also have, between 51 to 60 years old. And we even have respondent, I think the oldest respondent is like, or participant is about 88 years old. Marital status, most of them are married. And this somehow, me and Dr. Angosta were talking about this. I mean, are they really mean that? Because this is like, they're earning 25,000 or less, and we're talking of the whole household income. So maybe they misinterpret the questionnaire. Maybe it's just like for me and not the whole. Because we know that most Filipinos, especially those close knit, they live, together in one household. So that is a question. The average blood pressure, and this is what the students did, they just classified it according, most of them are diagnosed with high blood pressure. But then, just for the fun of it, they said, okay, 12 are normal, 40 are hypertension. And again, these are Filipinos that are already being managed. So are there, when you see the hypertension stage 2, maybe they're not really taking their medication.
So that's their current stage under medication?
Under medication, this is when we collect our data. And we flag the doctor, we flag the staff. If we see, especially if they are on the hypertension stage 2, you better double check and see this patient because they probably need to go somewhere, after this. Are you taking medications for blood pressure? And some of them said no, and they are hypertensive.
And they were prescribed it, but they're not taking it?
They're not taking it. So how many medications? Some of them will say 1, 2, or 3, And are you interested? And this is where I got my second study, because from this questionnaire, are you interested in joining a support group for people with high blood? Most of them said yes. They said, yeah, I think we need it, because they said they always only ask for the diabetic people, but they never really have a support group for people with high blood pressure. So what type of support group will you be interested to join? They really don't want face-to-face, because they said that's a lot of walking and bus riding, Can you put it in social media? So they have Facebook, even though their household income is less than 25,000. I mean, they have access. I mean, they are technologically connected. So that's a good thing about this population. And this is the most critical, because like if you look at the BMIs, so when we classify BMIs and we said, well, 25 is kind of like, you pass 25, you're kind of overweight already. So these are our female, and look at our males. So it's going up. Look at the waist circumference. And waist-hip ratio, I was just looking at the latest CDC. Waist-hip ratio should be 85 to 90. So they're a little bit up there. And the waist-height ratio is between 45 to 53. They are way up there. And this is funny because, like they say, has your weight changed since your arrival? Well, some of them will say no, some of them will say yes. And has your weight increased, decreased, or remained the same? Some of them really accepted that yes, it increases, or it increased. Same is true with the waistline, and this is what we are really trying to educate them. We always, to the point that we said, don't mind about the BMI and don't mind about the weight, but mind your waistline, because this is where the problem really starts. As far as the level of acculturation, when we look at the ASASPA, and normally the score is from 0 to 60, this population is, the mean is right here at the middle. So we're talking of residents in Las Vegas who's been here, the mean is about 22, 23 years, but they are still exercising biculturalism. So they're half-half.
Yeah, I was going to say, you didn't present how long they had been in the States, because That would seem to me to be a huge factor in
That
interpreting the data.
And we kind of control that because that's the unidimensional data. Before, all the acculturation model was based on the length of residency.
Right.
But actually, that's not the case.
Oh.
Because they said, well, we have Filipinos who's been in the U.S. for so long, but they still, like, they are on the bottom level of acculturation. They're still practicing, being a Filipino. Language, media, and social relations. This is like the scatter plot that we use, acculturation and waste. But look at the waste. It's very, very striking here. So this is like a red flag, for us. And we even have, we disseminated this information, of course, to the doctor, and we kind of let him know that's happening. So positive PAT coefficient, predicted that anthropometric measurements increase when the levels of acculturation increase after controlling for socioeconomic status, age, gender, and years of residency. In my first study in North Carolina, the immigrants there are so different from here. They are, first of all, they're not well established. They are brand new to the country. I mean, the mean length of residency was only 5 years. But then there's also a trend there that, the anthropometric measurement was increasing. They are acculturating faster when it comes to dietary acculturation compared to the general level of acculturation. This one I was kind of surprised because I thought that Filipinos here would be, would have a higher level of acculturation, much more than what I was expected. But actually, no, they're just like right there in the middle. And there are many, many reasons why that happened. Number one, we have so close-knit Filipino communities in Las Vegas. We have 51, 52 Filipino restaurants alone in the valley. So talking about McDonald's and fast food, I mean, that's their equivalent. I mean, they can easily go and get the food that they want. And we're not talking about the grilled fish and vegetables. It's the rich food that's hard to make. That why would I bother? Well, I can just like go to that Filipino restaurant, pay $5.99, and I'll get the whole meal with the dessert and sweets. So it is congruent to other studies. The anthropometric measure increase as level of acculturation also increase in this sample, and this is what we are. This is what is trending from this data. The biculturalism that can be translated to bicultural eating patterns. Now, is that good or bad? Because if you're bicultural and really you're just like zeroing on the salad and fruits for the Western food, which not so sure seldom happens, but then if you are doing the Filipino food and you're not really maintaining the healthy food, the healthy Filipino food, then you are kind of double dipping in terms of calories and intakes. And that may explain, the changes in the body after controlling all these significant factors. Immigrants may have the opportunities to consume Western food while retaining access to their native food as well. So I was looking at this picture last night and I said, what is the equivalent of this to the Filipino food? We have it here too in the valley, so it's very, very easy to access, very, very easy to buy and get. I mean, some Filipinos that I met, they can just like go to these restaurants almost every day because they're cheap and you don't need to cook, but they are rich. And some more, when the kids are having problems, I mean, selecting their food, then they go to McDonald's, they go to fast food. And of course, they have leftovers. So who are the eaters of the leftovers, as we know? Parents. So, so the parents eat this and the parents eat that too. So that may have explained. So there's a limitation of this study that generalizability of the results is limited in terms of the generation status of the participants. So we only capture the first generation immigrants. First generation is you are born and raised, or you were born in the Philippines and you came here as an immigrant. So we didn't capture the second generation, those who are already born and raised here. No baseline of pre-migratory information. So we really don't know. I mean, it's self-reported. Has you changed your weight? And they said yes. Study sample was recruited in only one primary clinic location in southern Nevada, and we didn't also measure the physical activity. And you're right, Dr. Van Buch, about that World Health Organization cut-offs for Asians. I mean, they're really pushing that as term as in terms of the BMI cutoff, because you know, like for me, for example, I can be classified as obese already in the Asian population. You know, if you measure my waistline, but for the other studies, because they are, and it's been a debate since my dissertation, because I used to cut-offs, and they said, well, maybe on your next study you do the Asian cut-offs. And then for Asian cuts-off, I discovered that each Asians have different cuts-off too. Like the Japanese are much smaller. So again, you know, much smaller frame, and I said, well, they need to have a leniency with Filipino Americans as well. For research, culturally congruent and innovative ways to capture the eating patterns, and this is the problem in practice as well, because when you assess their diet, if you ask, do you eat vegetables? Yes. Even in North Carolina, when we were asking that question, do you eat vegetables, you eat your broccoli? And they said yes. But we didn't know that they are frying their broccoli and they're frying their okra. So it's not the matter of, you know, of how they eat, but the preparation of the food itself, it adds up. So this is a phenomenon by itself. As far as education, acculturation and dietary acculturation, education for healthcare providers and patients, and you know, we have this opportunity that the primary physician is also a Filipino and he knows this stuff. But there's only one in the valley. I mean, we need to do more. Practice culturally appropriate assessment tools instead of what instead of do, what kind of Filipino food you're eating, instead of just saying, do you eat Filipino food? Because that can be interpreted in two ways. And I said, yeah, I eat Filipino food. And once we assume, oh, it must be healthy, right? Because you're grilled fish and vegetables. Not anymore. Dietary biculturalism or bicultural eating patterns, you know, this is something that I'm now really looking at in terms of healthy versus unhealthy Filipino foods. So we start classifying, and you know, that's been a debate, because some Filipinos, they say, oh yeah, it's healthy. Yeah, I said, you know, after you after you deep fried it so many times, and then, you know, being hypertensive, they like salty ingredients too to add, like shrimp paste and things like that to the diet. Innovative ways to record dietary intakes, that's a major problem, because nobody will do a food questionnaire, nobody will do a 24-hour dietary intake. I mean, it's just like time consuming and it's expensive. But we need to capture that in order to see what are they really eating. Demographics and characteristics of first-generation immigrants are changing, and we have new immigrants coming into the country that still consider the first generation. And these new immigrants, they have a new way of eating, because now, as we know, the Philippines, you know, were introduced, the Western food also invaded the Philippines. So which part of the Philippines they come from? And maybe they already had that before they even come in. So when they come to Las Vegas and see, oh, you have 5 more McDonald's here. From my hometown, it was only 2. Better for me, right? A combination of healthy diet and regular physical activity interventions may provide better health among Filipino Americans with chronic disease. And we struggled with this one because, you know, really, you're pushing them to eat healthy, pushing them to do physical activity, and as we know, you know, it's very hard to follow because food is delicious and exercise is just painful. So who will do that? So I know, right? And this is one thing that we kind of like tell them, you know, if you don't have a scale at home, try your jeans, whether if they still fit. I always tell this to my nephew and nieces when they went to college. You know, every few months you try on those jeans and you see if you're still maintaining that weight. Because this is what they say, you know, I'm fine, I look fine. And in some cultures in the Philippines, actually weight gaining is actually a good thing because it's prosperity, sign of prosperity. I'm doing well, look at me, right? Further studies are warranted to validate other factors in the acculturation process. And there's a lot of factors that we still have to consider. Acculturated stress is one. You know, these immigrants are having so much stress, especially at this time, you know, dealing with the political climate, with the economy, and things like that. So I've been working in this acculturation, as you know, since 2011. And it's really, it's just like, you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there are many factors that I still want to consider for my trajectory. And as far as this data is concerned, for that $5,000, we were able to do 2 podium presentations, 2 publications, you know. So that $5,000 goes a long way when in terms of interpreting the data. And this is my research team when we were collecting the data. This was taken when it was 120 degrees in the middle of the summer, and we were still smiling. So thank you.
Thank you.